Hey everybody, welcome to season 5 of What's IGN Crushing On. I'm Caryn Solomon and I'm your host, and we're here to talk about what's hot in pop culture. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of Crushing On. This week is all about the Real Bling Ring Hollywood Heist. We will be chatting about the docuseries that sort of brought to light this infamous trial and case of these really brazen teenagers who robbed some celebrity homes. And joining me on the podcast, we have, once again, as always, Leanne. Say hi, Leanne.
Hello.
We have returning champ, the king of the podcast, the queen of the podcast, everybody, Sloan, back again. Say hi, Sloan.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Caryn. Hi, Leanne. It's an honor to be back. I don't think anyone loves the sound of their voice as much as I do.
And also, returning from a long hiatus from the podcast, we have Lebo. Hi, Lebo.
Hey. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
I was going to say the expert in scamming Lebo. That's actually more like your title. So,
Yeah, as soon as I was awake when this show came out, like the bat signal came.
So let's start with your guys' opinions. What did you think about the docuseries? Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll go just because I don't know how, but this story completely eluded me until now. Like, I knew nothing about this case, the story, the drama. I think I knew the Emma Watson meme of like her dancing from the film, but I did not know this was the film and this was the story. So getting to actually watch the docuseries was like, I'm a complete ingenue, basically. Like, I know nothing. And it was insane. Firstly, just well done for the way they set up the docuseries. Like, the people that got involved and the way they built the narrative was like really, really well done. And I really loved what they did in terms of the juxtaposition of different narratives. So like Nick saying one thing and Alexis saying another thing, and then Alexis saying one thing and her mom saying another thing, and then just like the way they let the story unfold was like super interesting to me, just as a storytelling narrative. But yeah, like the story itself is wild, and then just getting the true life first-hand accounts, whether we believe it or not, was really, really interesting to me. So like I loved it. Like we were watching it while doing stuff, and my husband was in the background and he wasn't really paying attention, but even by the end he was like, what's going on? Like, whose house did they rob next? Like he was so invested just because of the way they built the narrative. It was amazing. So yeah, I loved it.
Sloan?
It's completely different for me, I actually came up in this era of celebrity and social media. You know, the Laguna Beach, the hills, the early days of the internet where anyone could basically get famous for anything. So I knew about this when this happened. I watched the show on E as well. I think what was interesting for me this time around was, obviously back then, what you knew about the story is what they were saying in the tabloids and in the press. But there was a lot of like little details that slipped through the cracks. So what was nice about the documentary for me is that the story didn't necessarily change because my opinions haven't changed at all. But it was nice getting like more tidbits of information about what the police were up to, what the lawyers were saying, because all that we saw back then was, this is the girl at the head of this little bling ring robbing all of these houses. And the one thing I learned in the documentary itself is that it wasn't actually just celebrity houses. They robbed over 50 houses. And that's not just celebrities, like that's just the regular rich folk.
Sure.
So I was like, oh, this is actually like a cute little syndicate. They needed someone older just to take the reins there, and maybe they would have gotten away with it. But that's just my opinion.
And you, Lebo?
Yo, that is so funny. I'm just thinking about like Sloan, I grew up in this era as well. So I remember the scandal in real time. So I would like to say that I didn't learn anything new per se about the case, but they did manage to frame it in such a way that okay, now we understand it wasn't just like Emma Watson's character from the movie who was in charge, it was really everyone else. And like Sloan says, like 50 houses, that's a bit excessive, guys. You know, there's such a thing as quitting while you're ahead. I think in terms of the quote unquote documentary itself, it's very much like a Netflix or Hulu documentary. I don't know if you guys remember if it was last year or the year before, where both Netflix and Hulu released like their Fire Festival documentaries. So one thing I've started to pick up from just like watching these things is Netflix has a way of like creating a documentary where, you know, it's focused more about the characters involved than what actually happened, you know. Like, you know, when you watch a documentary on like Nat Geo or Discovery, they like walk you through exactly what happened, who was involved, the technical specifics. This one, it was like trying to humanize them, you know. I'm like, it didn't change anything for me from like the facts of the facts, but it was good to like, you know, get like a more human element to the characters beyond the movie. The movie was obviously very cool. Like, I mean, we watched that in real time. It was so salacious at the time. We were all excited. You know, I did not hesitate to pirate it. You know, you have to keep on brand with that. But I had a good time.
Yeah, so I'm probably the same like you guys. I remember the story very well. And I remembered how shocking it was because I was like, what are these teenagers doing? But the one thing I will say about the docu series is that it kind of like as Lebo said, it like humanized it, but also like it made me kind of be like, I kind of get why they did it. Because I mean, if it was so easy the first time you go to Paris Hilton's house, I understand why you would keep going back. Um, so for me, like I think that perspective, or sort of like the human perspective, kind of made the story more realistic to me, and not like this far away thing that happened in this far away land to these far away people. Um, so I've seen a lot of criticism online where people are like, "Did we need this new documentary on the Bling Ring? Like, did we need this new perspective?" So what do you think? Do you think it was needed, or do you think they were just trying to like hit like open up old wounds? Sloan, you want to go?
I wouldn't say that we necessarily needed it. I would say that it was something that I definitely enjoyed, just in terms of looking at, like you said, they used the documentary to humanize people. And if you look at the time span between then and now, when this happened, Alexis Haynes Nyers back then was basically painted as the villain and the ringleader of this whole thing. Then the movie came out, and the movie also kind of painted her as the mastermind behind this. And then what was nice when I watched the docu-series, and this is just from my opinion personally, when you watch Nick, you can see that Nick was actually thirsty or hungry for this fame that she was getting. He wanted it for
Mm.
himself. I think one of the things he said in
Very much.
the docu-series was he hated that they got a nobody to play him in the movie. And they asked him who he would have
Yeah.
wanted. And he said, like a young Tom Cruise. And I was like, firstly, girl, that's delusional. Touch some grass. And I was like, you are letting your card show here, Nick. You aren't as innocent as they made you out to be in the movie.
Yeah, I agree with Sloan. I think it was like a PR thing more than anything. I wouldn't be surprised if Nick funded the whole thing. Like throughout, like you could really feel like the grandiosity with the way he was speaking. He all but said like, "Hey man, I was the one who started this thing. I'm the one who put them on." Obviously, like when they made the movie and stuff, they really like pushed the Alexis angle because you know sex sells. They had the reality show. They were more visible, so it made more sense. But like, and he took it personally because he's like, but guys, I'm the one who put them on, you know. If we actually like watch that thing again, it's like she was involved in like one of maybe 50 of those things. And even then she was
Mm.
standing outside. But like they made her the face of the whole thing when he wanted to be the whole what's Kim's bestie's name? Jonathan Shaban of the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely Jonathan Chabon. um, so how did you guys feel the film was in comparison, like the docuseries was in comparison to the film? Um, I actually just want to say, so I only watched the film now recently for after I watched the docu series, and I just never got around to it, and I was not a fan. I did not because of I found Emma Watson, her acting to be very bad, and there was just nothing going for me. So yeah, Sloan, what do you think?
I watched the movie back in the day when it came out. All right. And then when I got the invite to be on the pod, I said, okay, I'm going to go back and watch everything again, do my research. And I watched the movie again today. I switched the movie on and the first screen came up and it said A24. I have to tell you, my heart sank. I was like, guys, why did they co-sign this? Because that was a pile of hot garbage. And
That's
I
true.
actually went on a few different, or listened to a few different podcasts that also spoke about the crime, obviously, and the movie. And everyone said that the movie was hot garbage. And I just want Sophia to know that she's brought shame to her family's name for that movie alone. And
Actually,
the
I
thing
Worse in
about the
totally
movie,
Godfather
agree.
3.
yeah, the thing that I liked about the movie is the movie didn't shy away from what was the girl's name? I think her name was Rachel, the one that moved to
Rachel, yeah.
Yeah.
Vegas.
The
They
ring,
really
yeah,
did
yeah.
show like whoever was playing her in the movie kind of like villainous in her aspirations and what she wanted out of it. Because even like the very last thing when they asked about Lindsay Lohan and then she asked the policeman, what did Lindsay say about her? I was like, girl, get help.
I will say, based on, so I haven't seen the film, but based on the docu series, it was what I found missing because even in Nick's telling of the story, like the whole thing hinged on Rachel. Like she was the one that started with the the checking of the cars and the like she was the one that led Nick down this path and then escalated it. So for me, I was just like, I wish we could actually get her take on everything. Just like because she was the mastermind, the ringleader, the person driving everything. And I think getting into because again the docu series is interesting because it's the psychology of it, right? Like you're watching Nick and you're forming an opinion based on the perceived psychology of how he's reacting to things, and it's the same with Alexis. And just hearing the stories and seeing everything play out, you're like, shit, I wish I could have gotten into the psychology of Rachel. Like, what was her motivation? Why did she start doing this? Like, was she not fearful? Was she not driving certain things? Like, yeah, like that was what was missing for me.
Yeah, I really do think they missed a trick with that one. I was quite bleak in episode 3 when it did say that Rachel was contacted, but she declined to comment. I mean, obviously, at the end when they tell you like how much time everybody served and stuff, she ended up having the biggest sentence, which made sense because she was the ringleader, obviously. But it would have been nice to hear from her, like how she felt about this whole thing. In terms of the movie versus the docu series, I think both are entirely forgettable. To be honest with you, I mean, this whole thing, it's like an ego trip. Like you could tell, like Nick has been waiting for his moment in the spotlight. Like, yes, we've heard you. Congratulations. Now we get to move on. I think Alexis, for her, it was just to more about clearing her name. I think the best part of the movie is the one little detail they got correct was where Alexis said, I wasn't wearing Louboutins, I was wearing kitten heels. And that was like the last scene of the movie. So I was like, okay, fair play. Sophia does many things wrong, but she actually gets her fashion choices right.
Sloan?
One of the things that I noticed or that I looked up as well, obviously they gave everyone different sentences. Rachel actually got, I think, 4 years, but she only served 16 months and then they let her out. And one of the podcasts I listened to said that she hired a prison coach. And I have no idea what a prison coach is, but she hired a prison coach, and she basically tried to start pinning it on the others. Like, she changed the tune when she was in prison, and she was like,
which is
they
basically
did
what
what
Nick
you
did.
what you
I'm a
be doing.
victim. I'm a victim.
Yes.
He just tries to, it's just dry snitching across the board. It was actually quite disgusting.
I'm sorry, like the wildest part of that docuseries was like the relationship between him and the lawyer. Like the fact that he was just like, sorry, parents, I know you found me someone that's like really good at his job, but I need someone that looks the part. So I'm gonna go with a guy that works out and has a strong jawline. And you need to let me
I
make
just
my own
really like the
choices.
tension.
And I
You
was
know, I
like,
kind of respected him for that. I was like, you know what? I would have done the same. And I kind of respect you for being honest about it.
Because
Like,
this lawyer is bad for his brand.
literally, like a lawyer that told you to confess and say everything because I got the word of the. It was just, it was wild. Like the whole thing was wild. But like, yeah, no, the mentality of Nick, I think, is one of the most fascinating things I've seen in ages. Just like, how does his brain, like when he was saying that he called TMZ to photograph him when he was out
mm,
wearing Orlando Bloom's cap and glasses while he was in the middle of this whole trial. I was like, bro,
I love that.
what are you doing?
I completely understand it. I completely understand it. Because I know we're going to get into this a bit more later, but just to understand Nick's brain, think about it this way, right? You know, everybody goes to LA to become like a movie star, famous and stuff. Do you know LA has like 4 million people? And think about how many thousands upon thousands of people are out here going to auditions, applying for things, trying to find agents, trying to make a plan. I'll never forget Eric Stone Street, the guy who played Cam in Modern Family, when he won his Emmy, and he was talking about how he used to wait tables in between auditions. He's like, for 4 years, I've been waiting tables, going to every audition. I never missed one, and this is the one that made it for me. So now imagine what's his face? Nick is just one of like 4 million people like that, you know? So guys will do anything to get famous. You're busy bringing an entertainment crew to your trial. My mate, you're going to jail. But like,
But so, okay, so this is where and I think it might come in later, but like that's what got to me about it is like so you tell the story of Cam, but like Cam was willing to work, like he wanted to be an actor and cared about the craft. Nick himself said he was like. I didn't care about the acting. Like I went to stuff and I didn't care about it. I just wanted to be famous, but I didn't want to have to do work for it. And I was like, I mean, I respect the honesty, but also like there's a lot to unpack there.
but also think
And I
about
love,
it this way, right? I've just got this very quick point. Just think about it this way. I will never forget the very first edition of the E True Hollywood Story of the Kardashians, where Kim's scandal came out. And remember, Chris was the one signing off on everything. And then she said, point verbatim, I'll never forget this. She's like, obviously, this is a terrible situation, but my immediate thought was, okay, how do we turn Kim's 15 minutes of fame into 30?
sure. I mean, I get it. I get it. Um, I just wanted to ask, like, so who do you guys think was telling the truth, Nick or Alexis?
I think Alexis was telling the truth, to be honest. From everything, even watching this thing, like it wasn't like you could see, like I said, for Nick, this was like a PR thing. It's like this was his time in this his time to shine. But Alexis was just out here trying to get people to understand that, hey man, listen, I'm not the one who is doing this thing. Or Alexis, the issue was she was trying to make it seem like she was a victim in this whole thing, which she isn't. She mustn't act like all of this stuff was just happening in and
Mm.
around her. She had no part to play. Yes, I agree that Nick was the ringleader or whatever, but she did have a part to play. But she just wanted to emphasize that the way the story had came out, as we knew it in real time, was everyone was saying that Alexis was the ringleader. She was the face, the one who was doing everything, when it was actually everyone else around her, which is true. So I do think they're both telling the truth in some ways, but they're telling the truth for different reasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
No,
go
that's
for
what
it,
I was
Sloan.
going to say as well. I think it's not that someone's lying, it's just different versions of the truth. And I think at that specific time, Alexis and Nick were both hungry for fame. Unfortunately for
Mm.
Nick, is just not that interesting. So obviously Alexis was the one that took Spark, and because of the fact that she had the spotlight on her, I do think that the producers set her up a little bit as well, because one of the things they mentioned was them delivering the Vanity Fair article to her, knowing that they
Mm.
filmed, and also with the police coming to the door, because she said that there were no camera crews there when the police came. And there's another conflicting story saying that the crew actually called the police to say that they were ready and set up before the crews came there. And at that specific point in her life, she just wanted to be famous. So I don't think she even understood that she was being taken advantage of from all angles. And I
Mm.
think what was nice about her coming and doing this now is that she could just come and basically come clean and say she was a part of it, but not to the extent to which they painted her. And obviously now she's gotten sober, so she doesn't really crave that fame that she did, what, 12, 15 years ago.
I don't
Mm.
know. I also think like, so what was interesting for me was in watching it was the way they built up everyone's motivations, right? So like Nick had his motivation. He was this outcast. He wasn't comfortable in his sexuality. He had met Rachel, who was the first real friend he had. And so when Rachel started doing these things and he didn't want to lose her, he went along with it. And then you had Alexis and the way the narrative was built, but also her mom was hilarious to me just because, like, fuck.
She's a real
Sorry,
villain.
swearing.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I
Bro,
enjoy that
like
she brought
She's a
that
real
together.
villain.
lady is twisted. So like you see the mom, you see the setup, you see how things happened, and then you hear about Tess and see Tess. Like her mom at 16 is getting them fake IDs and sending them to essentially erotic shoots and going, this is normal because that's
Mm.
what she did, and so it's fine. Like her mom set her up for this stuff, and her mom's like, "Oh yeah, they're on like partying with Kid Rock, and it's totally okay that they're doing drugs, and like I've done drugs with them, and like, and that's okay." So I do think it's difficult to go. Who do you? Because I think they both believe the version of history that they remember, if that makes sense. Like
Mm.
you believe the stories you tell yourself. And so for me, I go, Nick was very much in his right mind. He knew what he was doing and he was calculated about it. And even in deciding to do the story, he's doing it for a reason and he's calculated in that reason. Whereas for Alexis, I kind of feel like she was very much a victim of circumstance and people playing her to get ahead. Like her
Mm.
mom was trying to be famous and her mom was pushing the secret and we're going to be famous and we're going to be on E and we're going to do these things. Um, and then she was on a lot of drugs, and let's not discount how that will mess with your perception and memory of events. Um, and so I just kind of go like, in terms of believability, I probably believe her more than Nick, just based on storytelling, narrative, and the way the docuseries was set up. Like she's the one I'm gonna back if you had to make me choose.
I think for me, like, I definitely liked her more than Nick, but I because Nick confessed to everything, I kind of feel as if he didn't have anything to lose in telling the truth. So I kind of believe Nick because I was like, if Alexis suddenly confessed to being at another crime scene, that could actually, like, I don't know how double indemnity works or whatever, but like that could incriminate her further. Whereas because she's only been charged with being at Orlando Bloom's house, um, whereas Nick was already at everything and he can just talk freely. So I mean, I'm not. That's just me throwing a span in the work, but I did tend to like Alexis more and want to believe her more. I also think she has more to lose by lying. So you know, I don't know. That was my kind of spin on things. But
Yeah,
why do
like for
you
me,
guys? Oh, go on. No, go
no, no,
on.
I was just to tack on to that. For me, I think it's important to know that acknowledgement doesn't mean you get absolution, right? For me, I can believe both of you. Like, yes, Nick, you wanted to be famous, you were tired of like feeling a bit poor and stuff. Like Alexis, and let's acknowledge Alexis's mom is just a pageant mom. I mean, the girls who go through these like Miss Essays, Miss USAs, Miss Teen Essays, they all have moms like that. Obviously, not as extreme in that sense. Like her forcing her kids to like go to these erotic shoots and be on drugs and party and stuff is no different to these ones who force their kids from like young ages to be on weight plans and going for these music lessons and whatnot, whatnot. I just think that look, I can believe both of you. You both had your reasons for doing what you did, but you were still wrong, Oaks. You know, like, oh no, I'm not comfortable with my sexuality. I feel a bit out of place and stuff. That doesn't mean you must be going around stealing from people. Like 50 houses, bro. 5-0. That's a bit much, you know? And I know in episode one they were like, okay, yeah, after the divorce, Alexis's mom like went into a lot of debt to try to keep up appearances, maintain everything. Like, yeah, it sucks. But like I'm not out here trying to steal from like 50 different people. And it's not like, you had no role or responsibility in what you're doing because you guys went and stole this stuff. Then you started posting it all over MySpace. So it's not like you were showing any remorse, especially in the moment. So it's neither here nor there for me. Like it's cool that we got to hear your side of things and your story. But if you want us to then start suddenly saying that okay, you are no longer guilty or responsible for the things you did, I'm sorry, mate. Go touch some grass.
I have to say that was one of like my favorite things in the way they set stuff up was like trying to make you feel sorry for them, and it literally came across as like poor little rich kids. Like, yes, it was difficult, and yes, you went through your hardships, but like it's still nowhere near the things to justify your behavior. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah. One of the things I had even written this down. I was watching this whole thing, and it reminded me of. I don't know how into pop culture you guys are. Test you, but in the first Batman movie from Christopher Nolan's trilogy, Batman Begins, he was busy arguing with the mob boss about how these guys keep stealing from people and with all the crime and stuff. And then he's like, oh, like then the mob boss says to him, oh, look at you. Oh my goodness, my parents died. Boo hoo hoo. You've never had to work for anything in your life. You've never had been in a situation where the difference between you stealing or hurting someone is the difference between you living and dying on that day. You know? So these people are trying to make it seem that okay, yeah, you've had a tough life. Your parents got divorced. Like you go to a school where there's a lot of inequality. Yeah, it sucks. But it doesn't mean that like you need to be out here stealing from people to survive. Like it wasn't life and death for you guys. You guys just wanted to like stunt on us because you did go and stunt on us. As soon as you stole the stuff, you started spending money, showing up at school, taking photos on MySpace. So like this was a whole ego trip. Like don't try to make it seem like oh my goodness, us against the world. You're not Jay Z.
Love that.
No, it's like exactly that. It's like when Nick is like, "Oh, I had such a tough life. I got dropped at school with a Honda." I'm like, "Bruh, you got dropped at school. You didn't have to walk." like, like for me, I was like, "It's already showing how good you had it." Nah, but I'm the same. I also don't think they like, especially him, did not show any remorse. But like, um, because according to them, it's like I don't know, like they were like doing like a Robin Hood type thing, like they're stealing from the rich, but they weren't giving to no poor. They were just like, yeah, as you said, stunting
They
on
were
us.
enjoying.
That's that was it. Um, so why do you guys think they decided to rob houses? Because I mean, I know he makes it seems like it's a gradual thing. Like, oh, we started with cars and then we moved into houses. But for me, I don't know if this is just me personally, but I feel like that's a big jump going from like breaking into cars to like breaking into houses.
Also, because they weren't like breaking into cars, they were just like checking cars that were unlocked versus like the concerted effort to, because when he went into the detail of how like you get the address, you Google Maps, you do the hike, you do the thing, I was like, that's very different to, oh, we're just rolling checking car doors. Like that's quite a big leap, you know. I cannot, my brain doesn't compute how they made that jump, and I don't think it's really clear in the docuseries either, like why I mean, they blame it on celebrity and trying to get into celebrity, but like I don't get it.
Sloan?
I just wanted to agree with what Leanne said. They didn't actually fully dive into why it escalated the way that it did. Because, like I said, they broke into more than 50 houses. They were checking cars, checking what's in the glove compartment, checking if there's keys, and seeing what they can steal. So, the only thing I could guess is that it was just about the thrill for them. Because after a while, you're going to get bored of checking cars. You're going to want something
Mm.
bigger. You're going to want something more exciting. One thing that I did discuss with my friend when we watched it is just about how, in that specific time, the internet was basically like the Wild West. You could do anything and find anything on the internet. We didn't have like all of the restrictions and laws that we have now. Because even if you think back to, there was another docu that Netflix did about the revenge porn guy, where people were just submitting pictures of their exes to a revenge porn site. Like, the internet was so wild back then that you could literally go in and type Paris Hilton address, and they'll give you everything from the house number to the street to the map, so you can see which wall is the lowest to jump over. So I think it's also a crime befitting of the times, because I doubt anyone would be able to actually pull that off now.
Yeah, yeah. Just to jump onto that, the long and short of it, why did they break into these houses? Because it was easy. You see, I was thinking to myself as I was watching the whole thing, I'm like, guys, where's ADT? Where's G4S? You're telling me nobody has security in America? Like, you guys aren't just like, you're not locking your cars, you're not locking your houses, you're not checking your cameras. Like, come on, it's just these are just failings. I mean, look, even even those guys who robbed Cyril Ramaphosa at Pala Pala, they didn't just do it because, oh my goodness, they're obsessed with celebrities or something. They did it because it was easy. They had the capacity. So they did it, you know. As for how it is that they graduated, it's that's usually how things go, dude. First you start selling Pokemon cards, then you start selling weed, then you start selling cocaine. There you go. First you start checking cars, then you start checking houses. Now here we are, you know. If you want to answer the deeper question of why, because that's what was concerning me as I was watching it. I think this will come a bit later as well, but one of my favorite scammers of all time, Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort. The funny thing is, he wrote books before the movie came out, right? So one of the key points he made in the book, because Nick made the same point about the same Honda, was that what Jordan said was, you know, the worst thing that can happen to you is growing up middle class. It's because at that time, you know that you're not poor, you know you're not starving, you know you've got food at home and stuff. But then you're also able to see those your peers and the people around you who really have money, you know. And these guys were living in like Calabasas and stuff. He's talking about being dropped off in a Honda. Now you're going to school with like celebrities and athletes, kids. Like, yes, you were able to get to school, but like you being dropped off in a Honda is very different from you actually like seeing like a Ferrari. You have access to people who are spending $5,000, $10,000 at a time. So I get why they wanted to like equalize or to feel as special as the people they were robbing were. But again, it doesn't absolve them.
Mm. So, like, do you think do you think that like a lot of the point in the docuseries is that we have to blame society because society at that time was very celeb obsessed. I mean, it still is, but I mean we all remember the tabloid culture of the early 2000s. But do you think that is to blame, or do you think they were just bored greedy kids?
They were just bored, greedy kids. What does someone being famous have to do with anything? People have been famous, guys. Oh, because Cleopatra is the queen, now we must all just be stealing.
Yeah, I must say, like, I found it fascinating that they tried to. I mean, they're not wrong. We kid. I say this on a pop culture podcast. Are we too obsessed with celebrity? Probably. Like, do we need to know where people are, what they're buying, what they're doing all the time? Probably not. Like, do we need to be in their houses? Do we need to know what they like, who designed it, Arch Digest, all those things? Probably not. But does that make me want to go rob someone? No. Like, there's like And I get the whole like you grow up middle class in a rich neighborhood and then that affects you, but also there are millions of people who grow up middle class and don't resort to criminality. I do think it is a certain type of personality or mentality that's like prone to that, that just like goes the other way. Um, I do think it is so like one of my favorite bits of the docu series was that closing scene because I loved how they positioned everybody as fame hungry. Out of everyone that you see in that series that they feature, there's maybe two people that I think are inverted commas normal. And the one is like the Asian district attorney, and the other one is the guy that ends up being the lawyer for, I think it's Nick at the end. Like they film him outside, and he's the only one that doesn't have the green screen. But like they all have the green screen. Like the mom was fame hungry, Nick and Alexis were fame hungry. Like the detective in the story ending up in the movie because he was fame hungry. Like Alexis's lawyer agreeing to TV things because he was fame hungry. Like it's just so insane to me. And I do think that's society based, but I don't think that's necessarily social media internet based, which was the way they framed it. Like because of the internet, we knew things and we could do things. I think that was just like people are prone to that and they were in a society like in LA or Hollywood where, yeah, I don't know. It was very strange to see normal working class people or people in normal working class positions such as cop, lawyer, whatever, also exploiting these kids in the story for their own gains, which was interesting.
And you, Sloan, what do you think?
I was actually just going to comment on that as well. I do kind of think that it is partly like internet and social media to blame. When we look at the caliber, I would say, of celebrity back then or person that was getting famous back then, you didn't have to do much. You just had to kind of be in the right place at the right time, and you would get yourself a reality show. Like right now, things I would say are way more stricter. You have to be almost exceptional and blow bubbles out your ass for them to even think of giving you a show. Back then, you just had to be on the cover of two magazines or seen with two people, and you'd get a show. So everyone wanted the fame because of how easily accessible the fame was back then. So one of the things I wrote down in my notes for the mom, I wrote Chris Jenner light. Because when I watched the reality show back then, you could see that Tess was like trying to engineer a famous little group of girls as well, like the Kardashians. But one thing I did write as well that I'm going to discuss at a later stage on another podcast, I said, at the center of every good documentary is a crazy white woman. And that's what I've noticed with all of my favorite Netflix docus. At the core, there is one white woman that got caught up in a cult. And this woman got caught up in The Secret. And I'm like, girl, of all the things to get caught up in, it was The Secret. And she was just living by this book. So it was just, their proximity to that fame is what made them want it more. I don't think by today's standards, any of those people would have gotten the amount of attention that they did back then today.
It was actually wild seeing. Okay, it feels like kind of ironic saying wild, but like seeing that they got a TV show because I was like, who were these girls? Like there was nothing famous about them. It's like, at least the Kardashians had like the connection to OJ Simpson, and their father was somewhat of like a
Exactly.
famousy person. Like
And that's the
their
thing
father
about
was
the
like
show.
That's how it
on
was back then, yeah.
Yes, but
I
that's the thing
was
about the show. They didn't get the E show because of the crimes. Those two things just happened to overlap. She just happened
like
to be filming a show at the same time that she was committing crimes. That was literally just the nature of how easy fame was back then.
Like everyone was out there trying to find like the next big thing. I mean, at this time there was, remember, I'm sure Sloan, you remember, do you remember the Gastineau girls,
I was
Rifkin
just gonna
Piano
say that.
5,
I
growing
loved
up
Elise Presley.
Gotti,
Growing up, Gotti was the best.
yeah, Simple Life, Joe Millionaire. Like it was too easy to be famous back then. So everyone was trying to throw things at the wall and see what stuck. So people just were looking for a springboard.
But I do think it's interesting though because the two motivations are different. Like Nick committing his crimes, he's not trying to get famous. Like he's trying to live the lifestyle, but he's not doing anything to be a part of those circles. Versus Alexis, where they were going for the reality TV show, they were trying to be like they were in the Marilyn Manson video, they were hanging out with Kid Rock, like they were doing things to get famous. Like I find it interesting because she was trying to get famous, but he wasn't necessarily. And I think those are two very different things.
Yeah, I think that he wanted to live in luxury, basically. So the stealing thing made it so easy because you didn't, like, you can do one robbery and then for like 3 months live off the proceeds. You have a new outfit, you have cash, you have, drugs, you have everything that you kind of need in order to have a good time. You can just go to parties and whatever. But what I don't get about Nick, sorry, I know this is a little bit off topic, but what I don't get about Nick is that why didn't he use what he got from the robberies to create a better platform for himself? So, like, he should have been getting, like, at least, maybe trying to look a bit better, trying to maybe get sponsors, do things. Like, I know the influence, it was before influencer culture, but I mean, I just feel like he could have, like, been trying to, like, get something better out of this instead of just, he's like, oh, I love the lifestyle, then I run into money, then I go and rob again. Yes, no?
I said it. Nick was wildly uninteresting. The thing about Nick is, if there was something catchy about Nick, if Nick was exceptionally hot, or if there was something interesting about him, and he was still doing the crimes, Nick could have become a model or something equally wild. Like I said, those days in the internet, there were no consequences. So if there was something interesting about Nick, he could have parlayed that into an acting career, a music career, a modeling career. But he was just so bland that the
He was
only thing
just a
he
guy.
could do was steal these things and try and use that little bit of infamy. That's why I was calling in tips to TMZ, say, hey, I'm going to check as quickly, send the photographers so they can catch him out because no one cared.
Nick was just a guy. And he said himself he wasn't that interested in working or acting. So I like he wouldn't be thinking the way you would want him to think that okay, of this money that I've gotten, let me try like reinvest this in myself. Maybe I get a trainer, maybe I get better clothes, maybe I get a camera, start to build his brand. He just wanted to have fun. Wanted to show up at school with the latest designer, like balling out in front of his friends or whatever. Like they weren't forward thinking like that, which is kind of understandable because that's not how a lot of people used to think at the time. Maybe hindsight is 2020. If he could go back and do it all, he'd do it slightly differently. He'd still do the crimes, yeah, but at least he'd invest in himself now.
Yeah, so okay, let's end this off. Any last thoughts about the real bling ring from any of y'all?
The only thing I'm going to say, Rachel is a nasty piece of work for pooping in Rachel Bilson's toilet. I will let everything slide. The crime, everything. But pooping in someone's toilet mid heist, that is some nasty business.
Anyone else?
Hey man, do the crime, do the time. They've paid their debt to society. I hope they're all in better places now. Nick's married. I think they've got kids. Alexis has kids. She's sober. That's good for her. I wish everybody well, but this thing didn't really move the needle for me. You guys were just haters. You wanted to steal from people. It's not like these celebrities didn't earn their money, you know. You just wanted to steal and have a good time, and you got caught, and you paid the consequences. That's life. So moving on.
I don't know. For me, it was the real villains of the show, and it was honestly, it was the people. It was the people exploiting others for fame. So
Hmm.
the detectives, the lawyers. Honestly, like second worst to the mom for me were the show producers. Just watching how they
They were
manipulated
horrible.
situations for the sake of good television. So, like, when they would go back and watch scenes from the reality show and be like, oh, that was such a great scene. But it was
When they were
like,
sitting
because they
laughing.
made, bro, when they made the mom find the pills because the gal was like high on heroin or whatever, and like they made just like that whole thing of, because I think like obviously we know reality TV is not reality TV, but I don't think I'd ever actually seen how producers set stuff up in
Funny enough,
such a
there's even a drama show
cold,
about this.
calculated
It's literally
way.
called Unreal. I don't know if anyone else has seen that.
It's one of my
Mm-mm, where is
favorite
it?
shows.
Yes,
It's
there's a
about
show called Unreal.
basically the behind the scenes dramatization of what happens on The Bachelor and how they like produce the
Um,
segments with the girls and like to get certain arguments and reactions for camera. Very good show.
Yeah, but for me, that was like the true villain of the thing. Like that was my big takeaway from the docu series.
My big takeaway was is like out of all the like I was a diehard fan of the Hills. Out of all of those girls, how's Audrina Patridge the best dressed one in your opinion? Like she was always so phony for me. Like she always wore like those like tops that like bubble dress type tops with like jeans. And I'm like, you had Whitney Port, you had Lauren Conrad, even what Heidi was better dressed than her. And I was just like, this is the one you wanted to rob, really? But yeah, other than that, um, yeah, I thought it was interesting. Um, but yeah, guys, that's us on the bling ring. Okay, so it's a lot of fun to do crushing on with guests. And it's not just Leanne and I talking to each other. So this week, let's chat about what y'all are crushing on. Sloan, do you want to start first? What have you been crushing on?
Ooh, I just started a show on Disney Plus called Best in Dough, and it's basically people obsessed with pizza. So it's basically every episode they bring three professional or home cooked like pizza chefs in, and they compete in 2 rounds and they win 10K. I will say, since it is crashing on, I'll be honest. When I was looking for something to watch, they had the little poster up for the show, and I saw the guy in the poster, and I was like, "Oh, he looks cute." And that was my decision behind why I decided to watch this. And I will say, betting on good looks did work out because the show itself is also quite fun. And then my other crush right now, I am reverting back to being a teenage girl. And I'm so obsessed with Sabrina Carpenter at the moment. She was
Mm.
on a Disney show, I think it was Girl Meets
Girl Meets
World.
World?
Yes.
Yeah.
But she's like a pop singer now. And I was watching videos of her on Twitter of her concerts. And I'm like, I can't believe how like people still turn out like in hundreds of thousands to watch like girls or like pop singers sing. And I don't mean like big stars like your Beyonce's, Drake's, things like that. Like the age of you have those little like pop girls that people like look up to for like 14-year-old girls. And I was listening to the music and I was like, I should not find all of these songs so relatable.
Lebo, what have you been crushing on?
Guys, this is a public service announcement coming to what I'm crushing on. Ramy season 3 is out. It came out on Friday. Guys, he is the worst person in the world, but that show is so funny. I'm gonna be watching it as soon as we're done here, actually. That is critical, critical, critical. That is the funniest, arguably the funniest show that we're watching on TV right now. Season 3. Yo, he's the worst human being in the world. You guys want to talk about humanizing, please watch Ramy season 3. Like, that's where we need to be at. Otherwise, besides that, for you people who enjoy TikTok, there's a creator called Joshua Neal. uh, Joshua Neal, Neal. That's his name on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to see some of his stuff, he's very, very funny. Just shows me how creative some people are out there. Go check him out on Instagram. If you enjoyed, go watch him on TikTok. You will not be disappointed. The latest one that he did was he had all the various star signs, Virgo, Cancer, Scorpio, all go to group therapy. Please, trust me.
And Leanne, what have you been crushing on?
I'm gonna probably use a banked one, and I think we might have spoken about it off recording last week. This Means War, rom-com, Reese Witherspoon, Tom Hardy,
Classic, underrated
Pine.
classic.
I had not seen it until last week, and I was like, why did it take me this long to watch this
This
movie?
is how we
Firstly,
do it.
bro, why is Tom Hardy not in more rom-coms? Because firstly, wow. And like Chris Pine is an underrated actor, like just generally. I think we know he's a treat, but just getting to see him do things like, yeah, This Means War. So funny, so good. The chemistry between him and Reese Witherspoon, Chris Pine and Reese Witherspoon was ridiculous. Like I have not felt that in a while. And I was like,
White excellence.
yes, so good. So good. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, give it a shot.
I actually have not seen it. I will I will give it a shot.
Pardon.
Um
Wow. You.
yeah. Yeah, I have not seen that. I don't know. I somebody told me it wasn't good and I just been living off that for like the last couple of years. Um with me, I'm in this weird rut right now where I really enjoy the dramatization of true crime. So like these TV series that are like fiction, well, not fictional, but it's like acted out, but it's based on real crime stories.
Like the
So I'm
state.
watching this. Yeah, I'm what that's literally what I was just about to say. I'm watching The Staircase. Um and I am so flippin' into this series. So for those who don't know, it's the story of of this novelist called Michael Peterson, and there's this very suspicious death of his wife who like fell down the stairs or something. She's like her body's at the end of the staircase, and then like all of these he gets arrested for the crime, and all of these secrets and other information comes out. Michael is played by Colin Firth, and his wife is played by the best actor ever, Toni Collette. So, and it's just like, oh, it's such a good series, and I am so into it. Okay, I don't know, I haven't finished it yet. I'm not gonna lie, I can't say it's a good series if I haven't finished it, but so far I'm super into it. So if you like me and you like murders and and true crime and that kind of thing, you should give The Staircase a try. But thank you everyone for being here. This was a lovely chat. Yeah, thank you Sloan, thank you Lebo, thank you Leanne.
Thanks for having me. It was so much fun.
Me, you can find at Caryn Welby on Instagram, at Caryn Welbys with an S on Twitter, and sign up for my newsletter, Wildest Dreams, at wildestdreams.substack.com. The podcast can be found at Crushing On Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. You can find us at What's IGN Crushing On YouTube, and you can find more information about this and all our other episodes on our website, crushingonpodcast.com. Send any feedback to mail@crushingonpodcast.com, and you can send us voice notes at +27 78 362 2566. Join our Facebook group, Crushing On Club, where we chat about the show, celebrity news, recommendations, the whole shebang. The show is produced by me, Caryn, as well as Rebecca Barches and Leanne Phillipson. The show is edited by Rebecca Barches. Our logo was designed by Nathifa Maroof, and the show was created in partnership with IGN Africa. If you like the show, tell everyone that you can, any way that you can. Keep up to date with episodes by subscribing to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review the episodes on Apple Podcasts, as it helps others to find the show. We'll be back next week with another in-depth conversation with a pop culture lover. See you then.